interesting how those Christmas carols always talks about a better time, better place, about hope and promise. We Protestants tend to have a hard time finding what we think is the right balance, allegiance, to give to Mary, the mother of Jesus. We often think that our Roman Catholic colleagues make too much of Mary, put her in a place that we're not quite comfortable with, but that leaves us then as Protestants with the question, well, what do you make then of Mary? Obviously, Mary is critically important to the Christmas story. Some of the most beautiful carols and Christmas music is centered around the mother of Jesus, no denying that. But just what part does Mary play in our theology and in our allegiance? The uneasiness becomes most apparent at Christmas time, for how can you talk about the birth of Jesus without talking about the mother who gives him birth? No Mary, and no Jesus. And of course, Joseph is there as well in the mix. Well, the gospel writer Luke provides the most complete story of the birth of Jesus, a couple of chapters, in fact. And Luke connects these two birth narratives together, the story of Jesus, born to Mary and Joseph, and the story of John the Baptist, born to Elizabeth and her husband Zechariah. And according to Luke, both Mary and Elizabeth are kinfolk. They are related in some way which is not spelled out. So both of these women are pregnant, and both will deliver sons. For Elizabeth, it will be John the Baptist, and for Mary, it will be Jesus of Nazareth. And for both of these mothers, they are convinced that God has played a major part in these birth dramas. For Elizabeth, she's an older woman, has been childless, and then at a time when all other hope had disappeared, she becomes pregnant with John. For Mary, much younger, according to tradition, her pregnancy has mysterious beginnings, and she comes to believe that her son will play a prominent role in God's plan of salvation. So both of them share this theme of great expectations, that something wonderful is about to happen, that God has some wonderful things in mind for you. You ought to listen up, you ought to pay attention, you ought to be prepared to be amazed and astonished. Great expectations. And that's what Christmas is about, is it not? And in some cases, they are unrealistic expectations. There are a lot of people who will find these days ahead of us to be days of significant depression. They will be hoping against hope that suddenly all of the unsettled stuff of family affairs, of personal affairs, will suddenly be resolved. Everything will be settled. Everything will be made whole again. And of course, miracles of that magnitude seldom come to pass. So instead of hoping for these huge miracles, perhaps we should take a stab at something more reasonable, something that depends more on us in our journey than on those around us. We will soon be at New Year's Day, 11 days more to New Year's Day. And the New Year always represents the gift of a new portfolio of days. Pristine, blank. Days upon which we will write the continuing story of our lives. Perhaps we should put aside for a bit our cynical bent, that been there, done that, I know how this movie ends attitude, and with some freshness look at this set of possibilities. What would life be like for us as we are writing on those pristine blank pages? Perhaps we would decide that the grouchy neighbor does have some redeeming qualities, hidden to be sure, but maybe they're still there. And perhaps that vexing co-worker can be tolerated a little bit longer. And perhaps that relative that we have been avoiding for the last year is going to show up again, and perhaps the encounter will not be quite as bad as you had expected. See, the season kind of prompts those expectations, making us a bit more tolerant, a bit more loving, a bit more forgiving. But in reality, the neighbor will probably stay true to form and will be unhappy about some other issue that will crop up in the coming months. And that coworker will find a new irritant, one they haven't looked at yet and found yet, but it'll be there. And the relative hasn't changed, nor has our attitude about him or her. And so we'll begin another year of polite avoidance, family dynamics. So the problem of great expectations is so often we are disappointed, we are let down, we are even crushed with the same old that has overwhelmed new possibilities. And some would suggest that the solution is very simple: aim lower. Have fewer expectations. Expect disappointment. Anticipate the worst. Probably won't be that, but expect the worst. Settle for meagerness, and maybe you can muddle your way through. That might work for some, but here's where being a follower of Jesus, I think, keeps us from those kind of attractive alternatives. Followers of Jesus. The 4 Advent candles that we have been lighting represent hope, and then peace, and then joy, and then love. And they are more than just a clever way to invite some congregational participation. As Jesus people, as Christians, we are expected to hold these virtues before ourselves all through the year, especially now, making these attributes the measures of our lives as they are lived day by day. As Christians, we are to be stubborn hopers. Stubborn hopers. More hopeful than those around us, who face up to the complexities of human life with all of its dreadful aspects and still cling to the belief that we are privileged to be living in this world with all of these various people around us. And that somehow God continues to bless this world and its peoples with God's presence and God's possibilities. Hope. As Jesus people, we will live toward peace. We will be peacemakers, the healers of relationships, the mender of fences, the bridge people who span broken lives. We will not give up on a world that is armed to the teeth. A world that chooses power over equity. And instead we will be voices for fairness, for rightness, for justice. And we will be advocates for the poor and the weak. We cannot help ourselves if we are Jesus people. And as followers of Jesus, we will live with an inner joy. A joy that springs from the conviction that all things are working together for our salvation, that nothing can come between us and God's love for us in Jesus Christ. A joy that does not make us immune to the trials and the temptations of daily life. But there is a spark of the divine in us and in others that tells us all is well. Do not be afraid. Be joyful. And as Christians, we are challenged to practice love, a love for people and a love for life. Someone has said, loving would be easy if it weren't for those people around us. But that's exactly the laboratory in which love needs to be practiced. To love those near to us, the ones we know, the ones with the warts and all, the past history that continues to cling around, the folks who are fallible, they keep bumping into our lives. Love them. And love the ones who are far away, who yearn for a chance, some opportunity to share in the blessings of a world that has not been very kind to them, but a world in which a few of us have much and so many have so little. We ought to be people of great expectations with grand visions of a better world, one in which there is more loving, there is more caring, there's more forgiving, there's more compassion, more humanity. Aim high, for with God all things are possible. Aim high, for God is at work in our midst. Aim high, for God is with us, is Emmanuel. The sign being that baby born to Mary. Someone shared a provocative idea, a yearning for a better society, great expectations for our lives as Christians, and they couched it in this kind of way, symptoms of inner peace. These are symptoms of inner peace. It goes like this. Be on the lookout for symptoms of inner peace. The hearts of a great many people already have been exposed to inner peace. And it is possible that people everywhere could come down with it in epidemic proportions. Some symptoms of inner peace. A tendency to think and act spontaneously rather than on fears based on past experiences. An unmistakable ability to enjoy each moment. A loss of interest in judging other people. A loss of interest in judging self. A loss of interest in interpreting the actions of others. A loss of interest in conflict. An inability to worry. Frequent, overwhelming episodes of appreciation. Frequent attacks of smiling. An increasing tendency to let things happen rather than to make things happen. An increased susceptibility to the love extended by others, as well as an uncontrollable urge to extend it. Great expectations, symptoms of inner peace. We're almost there, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. A loving God has done the heavy work, coming into our world to be like us, to be with us, this Jesus. Our work is yet to be accomplished. We are to be the living extensions of God's presence. And you know, today is as good a day as any to get on with it. Amen.